Just a quick kind of minor spoiler warning. There is a couple things I talk about in this movie that might spoil it for some people, or at least spoil some things, some surprises for some people. So if you're not into that, I do put time cards where you could skip to when I get to those parts. Or, you know, you can just click off of this and not watch this and go see it yourself, or just, you know, take this with a grain of salt. I don't spoil anything too major, so just know that and enjoy the video. Hello, I know the content isn't as the way I want it to be right now because there's a lot of things going on in my life with work picking up, and also I might be out of this room soon as I'm moving into, I'm still going to be in this house, but I'm moving into another room which is going to be my bedroom, and then also have a separate room for like an office kind of type game room where I will be filming videos. But I took some time one of my off days to go see the new Superman movie, a movie that I was highly excited for, not just because, you know, it's the start of the new DC universe under James Gunn, and he directed the film, but because Superman has always been a character that I love and adore. I mean, obviously, I grew up on Justice League Unlimited and all this kind of stuff, and, you know, saw the old Christopher Reeves movies, and I guess even, like, you know, Superman Returns, although I hate that movie with a passion, and something like Smallville is also something that I grew up with. And, you know, I've heard a lot of good things about this movie, not just from the critics, but from the audience, as both of the scores are really good. So I was going into this very excited, and I gotta say, yeah, it was fine. It was cool. I think it actually over-exceeded my expectations. Like, I went into this thinking it was going to be a good movie, but I didn't expect it to be this good. I'm not calling it the best Superman movie ever made. I'm not calling it that, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I don't want people to get that misconstrued. It's definitely a big step in the right direction than whatever the hell they were trying to do with Henry Cavill's Superman. And again, I'm not calling Henry Cavill a bad Superman. He was a great Superman. It's just the scripts given to him, whether we're talking about Batman vs. Superman or the Justice League movie, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like Superman in a sense. It was just so unusual than what I was used to. But with this Superman, it mixes kind of like the serious nature along with the goofiness that you would get, say, from like a James Gunn film like Guardians of the Galaxy, where there's always these serious elements with this kind of, you know, serious backstory, some of it dark, but also has that silliness in it where it's like, oh, you know, these when they're around this group of people, it's gonna be, you know, funny. It's not like the humor is overdone. That's something I was hoping for, was like, you know, Superman has always had this campy feeling to him, and you go back and watch Christopher Reeves movies and there's camp everywhere, but I didn't want it to be super, super campy, and it's really not campy. It definitely gets violent at some points. I mean, Superman literally punches a guy in slow-mo, and the guy's teeth come out. Plus, every time Superman heals from an injury, you can hear his bones snap back into place, so that's a little disturbing. But all in all, I feel like everybody did their job. I mean, David Crowen he did a good job as Superman. We didn't really see him much as Clark Kent, but, you know, they're probably going to be working their way toward that. Not that we want to see Clark Kent more than Superman. It's just I would have liked to have seen that kind of dynamic more, because we don't necessarily get to see him act as Clark Kent as much as he does when he's in disguise. Rachel Brosnahan was actually a pretty solid Lois Lane. I feel like this was the first Lois Lane to do something in a movie, because, I mean, when you look at the original with Margot Kidder, and I don't remember her name in Superman Returns, and then when you look at Amy Adams in like the Man of Steel and all this kind of stuff, it was like their adaptations were cool, but there was always something missing. But this Lois Lane actually goes out of her way and does some stuff and some action type stuff. Does she fight really? No, but she gets involved, and that was really cool. Nicholas Hoult plays a young Lex Luthor, and they kind of go toward the Jesse Eisenberg route where it's a younger Lex Luthor, but Nicholas Hoult made it work. I feel like with Jesse Eisenberg, I don't know, I just didn't see it or feel it at all. Like, he was one of the worst castings, I think, of the character Lex Luthor. Like, he could have been something else. He probably could have played Jimmy Olsen in that universe, but hey, Jimmy Olsen in this universe is Skylar Gisondo, who, again, I don't know much about this guy, but as Jimmy Olsen, he did an excellent, excellent job. Nathan Fillion, I mean, it's a James Gunn movie, so you're gonna see him. He was Guy Gardner, or one of the Green Lanterns, as he's known by, as he's supposed to be in the Lantern series with the other two, Hal Jordan and John Stewart. So it's going to be interesting to see that going on. And then we also have Isabella Merced, who plays Hawk Girl. The only thing I knew her from before this was that Dora movie they made a couple years back. I mean, I don't know. I have young nieces and nephews, so it was the only reason I had seen that movie, and I never would have thought in my life that she would be Hawk Girl. But on the little screen time that she has, she does an excellent job. There's other, minor characters in here. Crypto is introduced, which I absolutely love Crypto in this movie. Oh my, he's just a goofy dog who has trouble behaving, but at the same point in time, he's cute, but in a way of like, I mean, yeah, he's a dog, he's cute, but he's cute in a way where you're just like, I can see this being Superman's dog, even though technically it's not Superman's dog, because spoiler, if you want to skip the spoiler, I'll put a time card down here. Crypto is actually Supergirl's dog. Now, how do we know this? Because at the end, Millie Alcock, who was supposed to be playing Supergirl in the movie next year, makes a cameo appearance to pick up Crypto right at the end of the movie. So that was cool to kind of see Superman and Supergirl interact. And another thing I caught that's probably going to play a big part in things is during a fight scene, they're on the highway, and you can see a sign on the highway that says Gotham City, next exit. So they're already kind of setting up that Metropolis and Gotham City are like right next to each other, almost like, I live in Pennsylvania, so actually I'll do more like the Maryland, DC kind of thing, where it's like they're right near each other, they're so close to each other. But I found that little kind of Easter egg in there pretty cool. I guess it obviously had to be intentional by James Gunn, but, again, this movie, pretty good. The characters are awesome too. I also like Mr. Terrific being introduced into this movie. We get to see kind of more of him. And the dynamic between Clark Kent and his adopted parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, is also something that was really cool to see, as you find out that Superman's parents, before, they brought him to Earth and they had sent him this message, he had only heard the first half of the message. It was supposed to say, you're supposed to go to Earth and, be the guy, save everybody, help everything, but there was a corrupted version that Lex Luthor found out, because this whole movie, Lex Luthor's trying to paint Superman as the bad guy, the villain here, and he finds out that Superman's parents, his actual parents, actually wanted him to come to Earth to conquer it and take over and kind of create a new Krypton that they can rule. But Superman doesn't want to do that, and he realizes, like, well, I don't want to follow in those parents' footsteps, or at least what my parents wanted me to do. Martha and Jonathan, they taught me the right way, and that's the path I'm going to follow. And he, ends up, winning the crowd after that, because people find out that Lex Luthor was lying the whole time, and basically was the one that started this whole war in the first place, because he hates Superman so much that not only did he want to just kill Superman, but he wanted people to hate him. That way, when he did kill Superman, people be like, oh, okay, Lex Luthor killed Superman, cool, great. One of my main complaints is there are times where it does feel very Guardians of the Galaxy-ish, because again, James Gunn is the connection there. Like, when Lois Lane and all the others from the Daily Planet are in this ship that Mr. Terrific had that they're flying around, it's very Guardians of the Galaxy-esque. There's a lot of other characters, like, Crypto being in there makes sense, but you always feel like James Gunn has some sort of... It's like Groot is in the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's basically what Crypto is. He's not going to speak, but he's just kind of like goofy, comedic, but also can really kick ass when he has to. And there's also those characters that at first you end up hating, but then by the end of it, you're like, oh, they meant good the whole time, and they start, creating a bond with the main character and the other people. So I feel like that was the only time I was like, this kind of feels a little bit like Guardians of the Galaxy, but at the same point in time, it still never fully felt like a carbon copy of it, because you can still tell the difference between the Superman movie and Guardians of the Galaxy with a lot of things that get involved. But overall, I would definitely recommend this film, or at least just give it a shot. I know there's people who are upset with the old DCEU going out, and people wanting to boycott this version because they're just so upset that Warner Brothers abandoned a universe that just wasn't working. And I keep trying to get that into people's skulls. There was no fixing the old DC universe. universe. There just wasn't. You could have tried as best as you wanted to, and there was no way you were going to reverse all the wrongs that the universe was doing. Was there some decent movies in there? Yeah, I like the first Aquaman. I think the Justice League Snyder Cut was pretty good. I think the second Suicide Squad, which ironically directed by James Gunn, was pretty good in itself. You know, I feel like they had the right idea. They just kind of rushed a lot of things, and it led to a lot of bad scripts and everything else. So I knew the DCU was just going to crash, and they were going to have to restart it anyway. And I really love that James Gunn is the guy to do it, because he cares about the craft. He cares. He's a comic book fan, just like people going to see those movies. He wants to put his own spin on things, but he also wants to kind of still stay true to the comics and whatnot, and also, you know, bring in these smaller characters that we never even heard of and make them, you know, make us fall in love with them. I mean, look at Marvel. Marvel basically did that. I mean, when Disney created the MCU, there was characters, obviously the big names that we already knew and loved, but then there was like smaller characters that appear in the comics, but maybe not as often as the others, where at first you don't really care about them, but then by the end of it, you're like, huh, I care about these characters, and that's what James Gunn is trying to build here. And I can definitely say that part one of the new DC universe is off to a good start, and I can't wait for shows like Lanterns and the Supergirl movie next year. And obviously he's been teasing Batman the Brave and the Bold, so once they find their new Batman there, in that sense, I'm assuming that's when they're going to start, you know, filming for it and everything, because I think the script is still being worked on for that movie. And what I like with James Gunn too, he's looking for quality over quantity. Yes, he does want this stuff to come out. He has a whole story planned, but he doesn't want it to be rushed, because when you start to rush things, that's when things kind of spiral out of control. And that was the problem with the old DC universe, and that's kind of the problem now with this Marvel universe. At least they've starting to learn from their mistakes. They're not releasing as much as they used to, but Marvel would, you know, crank out 5 to 6 to 7 movies and shows every year or two, and you kind of got tired of it. Not in the sense that you were just worn out by comic book movies. I agree with James Gunn in the sense of, I don't think people were just worn out of comic book movies. They were just tired of getting something faster than they should have that ended up not being the quality that it should have been. If you give the fans good quality movies and shows, they're more willing to keep going and seeing them. That's why the first like 3 or 4 phases of the MCU was so good. Yes, even though they were crapping out these movies, they still wanted to give you the quality. But it seemed like after the last Avengers film with the original cast members, Marvel just stopped giving a crap and said, all right, well, we still got these stories to finish out, so what do we got to do here? Whereas James Gunn seems to want people to take their time and creating the perfect story, and hopefully making a DC universe that we've kind of all been waiting for at one point or another. But that's my thoughts on this, kind of as spoiler-free as possible. But you can tell me in the comments below if you've seen this movie. What do you think? Because I know there's also people that complain about this being a little political because of the immigrant side of things. But newsflash, Superman has always been an immigrant, because he's not from Earth. So, you know, I don't know why people are so surprised by that. But yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and I will catch you all in the next one.
What is this? Crypto! What the hey, dude? I thought you destroyed the whole Superman robots. I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine, but he is unruly. And he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't, in our heart of hearts, care less whether he lives or dies.